38 menit 14 detik sebelum pasar kita ditutup di penghujung pekan ini. Akankah indeks kita masih bergerak malu-malu? Koreksi yang terjadi pun masih koreksi yang dalam batas wajar, bahkan sangat tipis. Tadi baru saja kita bahas bersama Yazid Muammar juga bagaimana koreksinya semakin menipis, dan secara jangka pendek menengah indeks kita pun masih bisa memiliki taji menguat bahkan 6.200, 6.300. Bukan hal yang mustahil untuk bisa diwujudkan. Kita nantikan juga pemirsa nanti sepanjang pekan ini apa yang bisa disimpulkan, dan hari Senin ke depan akankah fenomena window dressing memperkuat 2 pekan terakhir dari Desember ini. Kita ke berita bisnis untuk Anda. Harga batu bara mampu rebound setelah sehari sebelumnya menyentuh level yang terendah dalam 2 pekan terakhir. Dalam sepekan ini harga batu bara sudah terkoreksi, dan koreksi yang terjadi ini hampir 1%. Namun pada penutupan perdagangan, kalau kita lihat di hari Kamis, harga batu bara Newcastle untuk kontrak berjangka terjadi penguatan naik 0,49%. Terakhir informasi yang kami peroleh ada di level 102,15 dolar Amerika per metrik tonnya. Ini menarik karena ada sentimen positif dari semakin dekatnya damai dagang Amerika Serikat-China. Kemudian faktor lainnya ada mengenai membaiknya konsumsi batu bara China akibat musim dingin yang telah mencapai puncaknya. Namun pelaku pasar juga masih memprediksi cuaca dingin tidak akan berlangsung lama, sehingga kemungkinan tidak akan menggerus banyak stok batu bara yang saat ini tengah melambung di China. Ya, akan kita bahas ini bersama Dilep Srivastava, Direktur dan juga Sekretaris Corporate dari PT Bumi Resources Tbk. Mendampingi saya Arief Gunawan dari tim riset CNBC Indonesia. Tadi menarik Arief, kita sempat bahas mengenai siapa sih sebenarnya importer terbesar dari batu bara. Ternyata ada Jepang juga di sana, tapi kita sering skip dari pembicaraan mengenai Jepang. Kita banyak fokus ke Tiongkok. Kita sapa terlebih dahulu narasumber kita, Mr. Dilep Srivastava. Thank you so much for your time. Generally speaking, how do you see the energy business, especially regarding your company?
First, thank you for inviting me here.
Our pleasure.
I want to say that we think that the prospects for energy are overall extremely bright if we look over the medium and long term. Presently, as far as our sector is concerned, like coal, we see coal as being there for the next 30 or 40 years. We don't see it disappearing. There is actually no real short-term or medium-term substitute for coal. Yes, renewables and nuclear and other forms of energy will have a larger say in the total feedstock cake for producing power. But coal, which is running at 60 or 70%, might drop in the OECD world. But as far as Asia is concerned, we see Asia as continuing with coal and growing in coal, led largely by India and non-China Asia. But even China, we see China as growing over the medium term.
Well, this is very interesting regarding to your point. For the short term and for the time being, no substitute for coal, meaning that coal happened to maintain its privileged position. Anyway, should we concerned or worried a lot about the recent developing sentiment? Let's say the slowing demand earlier, and then the volatility of the movement of the coal as well. How do you take it?
You see, there are two segments to coal. One is the high-ranked coal or the benchmark quality coal. That is relatively unaffected. That still ranges at index levels of above $100. Globally, actually, there is a shortage of high-ranked coal. And the second point is that if you look at investments, new investments in the coal sector, many institutions and investment funds and banks are increasingly reluctant to invest in new coal projects and coal-related projects. As a result, what I mentioned before, that the demand for coal will be there, but the capacity, supply of coal will be constrained. So when we look medium term and long term, I would view the prospects of the coal price in view of the supply-demand imbalance to continue to be buoyant.
Okay, Arief Gunawan.
Yeah, as of today, the the coal price only increased 1.95% year-to-date basis. So it's not a very bullish movement for coal price. So how do you think that's going to be,
You see now,
optimistic?
we have been in the coal sector for the last 30 years.
Exactly.
Now, we have seen many rises and dips in the coal price. Now, if you remember 2016, there was a huge dip
Yes.
when the China demand fell and their growth rate fell. And the coal price dropped to below $50 per ton of benchmark quality. Now, when we are looking at 2018 and prospects for 2019, the benchmark index price continues to rule above $100. And when we look at the forward forecasts for high-ranked coal, we continue to see it ruling between $90 and $105 to $110.
110.
Now, the dichotomy is that we are finding that the low-ranked coal, which is largely used by China and by India, which take them in large quantities, China from November has imposed some import restrictions on coal. They have, in reality, imported 12 months requirement in 10 months.
Okay. That's
And there was also the expectation that the winter will be more severe than what it is in China. So China is well stocked on coal. So what they have done as a measure to cool down the low-ranked coal prices is to restrict traders and users from importing coal and have subjected them to a quota.
Quota, yes.
Now, much of that quota has already been exhausted because they have over-imported in the last 10 months. So we believe that they are correcting their inventory. Now, two factors can change their demand. One is if the winter suddenly becomes very severe,
harsh.
then they'll be under pressure to import more.
More coal.
And the second one really is with regard to, one of course is the weather. The second one is once the inventory corrects, which is likely to happen in Q1, they will issue new quotas for 2019.
Next year.
Next year. But they will control the quotas such that there is no stock for resale and too much of the trading element. They will encourage direct contact with actual users and utilities. So what Bhumi is doing, Bhumi is in touch with utilities direct to try and encourage them into taking long-term contracts if they can, because the discipline of long-term contracts in China is not yet as refined as it is in Japan and in other countries.
Okay, Mr. Dilap, let's continue after this one. Let's hold on that point. What is Bhumi doing then? Because given the information on hand also, let's see, coal reserves and resources, this is the largest in Indonesia. Reserves are now about 2.37 billion metric tons, and this is increasing to around 3 billion metric tons as well. The demand is always there, the capacity is always been built. Then what possible disruption when we talk about the disruption of this business after this, Mr. Dilap and Arif Gunawan. Pastikan Anda masih bersama kami, Anda menyaksikan Closing Bell CNBC Indonesia. Dan kita hitung mundur lagi 29 menit 37 detik sebelum pasar kita ditutup di penghujung pekan weekend ini. Yeah, Dilap is confidently saying that the demand is always be there, just like any other business. There is ups and downs. The thing is, regarding the capacity, we have the possible and foreseeable constraints as well. Now, given the current and recent policy, especially by People's Republic of China, you mentioned that it might slowing down the demand from Indonesia. But anyway, the big potential is there, especially about the freight advantage. We are one step ahead. In case they close up the door, let's say from the United States and the other exporter of the coal. How do you take on this?
Well, the freight from Indonesia to China is definitely cheaper than Australia and from any other country. So I would think that Indonesia is in a preferred spot. It is a preferential spot to take coal from Indonesia.
Plus point for us, Arif, right?
Now, if you ask yourself the question, why has the China Investment Corporation invested over $2 billion in Bhumi resources? I would view that more as a strategic investment. It's the largest investment of the sovereign government, in Indonesia. And I would think it's a strategic long-term intent, which is related to, our ability to supply coal to them and to the world.
Arif.
Yeah, the CIC investment, do you think it's gonna expand not only in terms of supplying coal, but maybe producing more value-added product from coal?
See, China Investment Corporation is a sovereign fund.
Okay.
But what it does, when CIC come in as a strategic partner for us and in Indonesia, it opens out doors for investment by other Chinese companies into Indonesia and into sectors which are critical to Indonesia.
More to follow.
We think that China has identified Indonesia as a prime investment destination.
Okay.
And I understand that they are interested in several energy and infrastructure-related projects. And maybe there is scope for Bhumi to do more.
Okay, in the long term.
In the medium and long term.
Because up until now, Bhumi only produced, thermal coal and not the, value-added products from coal like liquefied coal, maybe CBM. Do you think?
See, coal is a finished product.
Okay.
Coal doesn't really require any processing to be exported as a finished product.
But you can refine it to
But
another. Yeah.
the outlets for coal are number one, power. Now, Bhumi has progressed investments in power. In fact, KPC produces 64 megawatts of power, and they supply about 1/3 of that to PLN, which is connected to their grid. And there are plans for KPC to further add capacity. They're adding another 18 megawatts, and I think they are in dialogue on a slightly larger plant via Mine-Mouth.
Okay.
Now, power is definitely one downstream for coal, and I think a lot of producers in the coal sector are looking at that. So we are also looking at that.
Yeah, following to his question, and I'm still so interested about this particular point you mentioned about what is Bhumi doing given the current situation. What is actually Bhumi producing mainly to ensure your sustainability? Because you happen to have also commitment becoming a diversified mining resources company, especially in Indonesia. Can we be still on track given the constraint and the possible threat and stay?
See, what is happening today is a short-term aberration.
And that you can ensure.
Yeah, it's not something that we view as being a long-term strategic issue. Coal, as I mentioned right in the beginning, is here to stay. And the demand will keep rising. Maybe the share of coal in the total feedstock mix for power can come down, but the total cake will be larger.
We talk about the cyclical pattern also of the business, just like any other business. Are we on the bottoming level of the cycle when we talk about
this is
energy?
This is hardly a cycle. This is actually a China-led, a China and U.S. trade war, and a foreign currency related issue.
From there. Yeah.
Now, when I say foreign currency, what is the problem with currency? Essentially, India is a large consumer and importer of coal. Now, the Indian rupee has weakened considerably over the last 6 months compared to the US dollar. Now, the Indian power plants, their power tariffs are fixed in Indian rupees. So they are under pressure to actually import coal at a more economic price, whereby they can use it for power at a rate, which can meet the tariff without they incurring losses.
Yeah.
So when China has slowed down on import of coal, India also views that as an opportunity to request for lower prices. In fact, today, if one looks at the price, the HBA price and the supplies to PLN probably are more attractive than actually exporting. So what we are also doing in Q4 is actually trying to meet all of PLN's requirement.
Another point we discussed during the break also, Dilip and Arif, before, how far this trade war between China and the States will impact on this particular business. You said no need to be troubled all the time and worried so much on that. The question is, how insulated, especially your business in Bumi Resources, how insulated are you toward the impact and the possible big hurt from this sentiment, trade war?
We are not factoring in the China-US trade war and its impact on our coal. We think what can happen really is it could impact currencies. And when it impacts currencies, when they weaken, for example, if the Australian currency weakens, right, the dollar value for the benchmark can be impacted. If the Indian currency weakens like it has, then they'll find it uneconomic, to pay the index dollar prices. Now, those are the kind of factors which are abstract factors which will come into play.
All right, Arif, please.
Okay. Yeah, so the geopolitical factor now, trade war, is not directly affecting this industry. So it's still basically on fundamental side, the demand from China and India.
See, if you also look at the Paris protocols and you look at the statements being made, in the US, the US is protecting the use of coal and oil and gas and fossil fuels. If you recall, in the previous regime, they were actually advocating against coal. Now they are actually pursuing a policy which is very different to what was being pursued 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So that should give some kind of a fillip, to a continued usage of coal. We've also found that in developed countries, including countries such as Germany, who have said that they may wish to phase out coal for producing power, they are having some social issues to contend with. What do you do with unemployment? I think this is the problem in the US coal mines as well. What do you do with the 50 or 60 or 70,000 workers who will be laid off?
So coal will become popular again.
You have to find something alternate for them. Now, those are also factors that are coming into play right now when people are talking so much about phasing out coal.
All right.
They've got to look at something far beyond than just phasing it out.
All right.
And for Bumi, does this mean that you're going to produce more coal for next year? This year you target 83 million tons.
This year we will produce the same as last year, about
85,
86 million tons.
Okay.
We have done 63 million tons up to September.
September, yeah.
And I think we can do 21, 22 million tons in Q4. Okay. But as our strategy, we are trying to place as much of high-ranked coal as possible abroad, right? And for the low-ranked coal, we are trying to peg it such that we are able to make some margins out of what we sell. So like I said, that we wish to supply more domestically, and if PLN has requirements, we can meet them as well. But at the same time, we know that the rains have come in the coal mines. That is going to affect production.
The cost.
No, it can impact output. What we are also doing as strategy is to build up inventory so that when the market turns around, we will have coal and we can probably realize better prices.
That's how you...
Now, as the largest producer of coal, now Bumi produces 25% or has a capacity of almost 25% of Indonesia's coal. Now, if we start supplying all the coal in the international market at distressed prices, it can only bring down the price more.
Right.
It will further lower the price. So we are being circumspect because we have been through such cycles before.
Right. Bumi Resources, frequently you mentioned about the high-rank coal. This is particularly and obviously becoming your darling of Bumi Resources. How far have you translated this tagline, becoming a diversified mining resources company? Because coal, oil, and gas, and then you have also minerals and non-coal as well. How are they now?
You see, as far as coal is concerned, over the medium term, we will look at ways
You will focus
on how we can catalyze the use of coal for industry in locations, contiguous to our mining sites. So whether it is an industrial estate concept or something, we believe that those will require power, and our angle will be to supply coal. Now, we are already doing that in KPC through captive coal-fired power plants. We would like to do that if there is industrialization in areas where there is feedstock like coal and oil and gas, they will require power and we can supply them the coal.
All right.
The second one is that we acutely recognize that Indonesia is short on energy.
Electricity.
And they are short on oil and gas, on oil basically. And they are a net importer of oil. So if there are economic ways on how we can examine a coal to gas kind of conversion over the medium term, we can look at it. And that is definitely on what is called our sites.
Right.
But at this point of time, our priority is debt restructuring, repaying the debt.
Okay.
And getting back to health. So we can look at those in line with national priorities, over the medium term.
Yeah. What about the reverse stock split business strategy? We heard a lot about that, and we've been wondering about that. Speaking about refinancing and restructuring on your debt toward the much healthier financial state.
Now, I'm not sure what is the source of your information.
That's what we heard.
Because the company has made no statement of a reverse stock split. Now, I must tell you that Bumi fundamentally is very strong. Its production of 85 million tons is about 70% larger than the next producer, right? It is very big. The main point is that we have long-term equity investors in Bumi. And they have a long-term interest in the company, and they recognize the value of the company. Now, if you look at the lenders, when we did our debt for equity conversion, the share price of Bumi was 50 rupiah.
Okay.
But we agreed to a net asset value of $4.6 billion, which translated to a share price of 926.16 rupiah per share. So the lenders have settled $2 billion of debt at 926.16 rupiah per share, when the share price was 50 rupiah.
Yeah.
Right? So there is no link or relationship with the share.
So
they know what the value of the company is, and that was at a time when the coal price was $50 or less than 50. So we believe that this long-term intent and value is recognized by a certain section of our equity community who are long-term holders.
All right, that is your...
So Bumi, I would think, is an investment option for term investors, who have the ability to recognize value.
All right, Dilip. Yeah.
And who go for, a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year investment horizon.
Yeah. Very strong standpoint to invite the investor. In the meantime, let's leave it as the market rumors when we talk about the reverse stock.
Well, we have denied it. We have said that the company has never, ever considered a reverse stock option. And when we saw a story by CNBC, which was circulated yesterday, a September story, and we were asked by investors, why are you considering this? And we said very categorically no. And we put out a company announcement that if you have any doubts to our investment community, we would request them to contact the company for facts and not go by misleading rumors and by motivated speculation.
We got the point. And just let's wait for until further notice. Very brief, Arif.
Fundamentally, you said that you have a strong position, financial position. And now we're in December. Could you provide some number about bottom line and top line?
Well, in
target?
2017, Bhumi made a profit of $353 million. But out of that, there were some one-off gains. We did a revaluation of Arutmin.
Yeah.
We also participated in the tax amnesty. So we got some extra push from there.
Right.
So last year is not strictly a comparison.
Okay.
When we look at this year, our core net income is $237 million. And we think that by quarter four, while we do not forecast profit, we think that we should be looking at a EPS of around 60 or 65 rupiah per share.
60 rupiah per share.
And that, frankly, at 130 rupiah,
Alright.
gives us a PE of less than 3,
Yeah.
compared with anybody else, which
Yes.
is between 7 and 12.
Thank you so much. Dilip Srivastava, Director and Corporate Secretary of Bhumi Resources. Let's keep another big major issue for another chance with you. Thank you so much for your time. And Arif Gunawan also. Ya, pastikan Anda masih bersama kami di Closing Bell. Kita akan segera membahas penutupan indeks harga saham gabungan hari ini. 10 menit 44 detik yang tersisa. CNBC Indonesia, Beyond Business.